All right, we're going.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Carl. I'd like to welcome everybody to the July meeting of the ICC Fire Service Membership Council. I'm going to go ahead and ask Carl to do a roll call for governing committee members and see if we have a quorum.
Very well, Chief. We'll start with you. Chief Metz.
I am here.
Very well. Chief Reed.
Here.
Chief Brian Adams. Chief Brian Adams. Fire Marshal Boisfort.
Yes, sir.
Got you, Rick. Chief Buxton. Chief Buxton. If I could ask everybody to mute while I'm calling the roll, please. Tim Cowan. Marshal DeRochers.
Yes, sir.
Tim Deal.
I'm here.
Chief Krasinski.
I'm here.
Chief Hyde.
Present.
Gotcha. Chief King. Chief Andy King. Chief Lane. Chief John Lane. Kelly Nicolello.
Here.
Marshal Porter.
I'm here.
Steve Swarthout. Steve Swarthout. Chief Wassam.
I'm here, Carl.
Sir. Chief West.
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, Chief West. And we've got past President Bryant joining us as well, correct?
Looks like he's on the phone, but he's here.
All right. And myself, Tim Schmitz.
I count 11.
Very well.
So
Back to
we
you.
do have a quorum. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. We are going to jump right into our presentation for the month before we get into business. And I'm going to have Carl introduce our guest for this month so I get it all correct. I know there's a national and a building alliance, and I don't want to screw it up for him. So, Carl, go ahead and do the introduction of our two speakers today.
Oh, yes, sir. We actually have three. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Jeff Greenwald to do the presentations for Mr. Mann and Mr. Coleman as well. But I'd like to welcome Jeff Greenwald, representing the North American Modern Building Alliance. And for some reason, I'm like Rain Man. I can remember these acronyms for some reason. But thank you for joining us today. I know you guys have done a lot of preparation in order to come to us, and we look forward to your presentation. So over to you.
Carl, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and the Fire Services Membership Council. I'm Jeff Greenwald, and I'm a technical consultant for the North American Modern Building Alliance. We also have with us Paul Coleman. Paul works for Huntsman, and Paul is really a member of our executive committee, and it's really Paul's kind of direction to kind of try to do this outreach to the fire service community. We also have David Mann with us. David is the staff director of NAMBA. David also works for the American Chemistry Council. We're excited to be here. So Carl and Chair Metz, I'm going to share my screen and get my slides rolling. Let's see if that works. And I am going to put it on presentation mode. And I am just going to assume that everybody can see what I got.
We can see it just fine, Jeff.
Excellent. Brief introduction. We are a trade association of wall manufacturers, and we're interested in building code activity, education activity, research, and project management with regard to plastic building materials in the building envelope for fire performance. So you'll hear today that we'll talk about our work at the IBC. We also want to talk about some other work that we discussed with Chair Metz and Vice Chair Reed. We do have an executive committee. You can see those members listed on the left. We do have our own budget, so the executive committee kind of gives us our direction as well as gives us approval to spend resources on activities that are a benefit of our members. We also have a committee structure as well. We have a fire performance technical committee, a flame retardant technical committee, and those committees are actively looking at those issues on kind of a monthly basis. We have continual conversations, but we try to meet regularly on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. We do have a strategic plan. We're focused on addressing fire safety through the development and enforcement of building codes. That's one of our strategic goals. And on the right-hand side, I'm kind of showing two of our strategic goals, one on codes and standards, and you will hear about our activity at the IBC that we just completed at the code action hearings. But also one of our goals, and again, Paul Coleman is interested in this, is the outreach to you, the fire service community. And again, because of that, we do appreciate this opportunity to reach out to you and allowing us to give you this introduction. And also we're here to hear your feedback and your comments on some of the issues that we're going to present today. So really on the right-hand side, these are the two items I'm going to be planning to talk about in the next 15 or so minutes. We focus from a building code perspective on Chapter 14. We have our spotlight on that chapter that regulates the minimum requirements for exterior walls. Fire testing requirements come into play into Chapter 14. We also have our eye on Chapter 26 that regulates plastics. Again, our members manufacture those products. We also do work and monitor the fire code as well. You know, we know that things are not done in a vacuum, and the fire code and the building code are kind of consistent and integrated together. And my hope is I will talk a little bit about the fire code towards the end of the presentation, some of the programs that the American Chemistry Council has to support your work and your fire departments and to support some of the provisions that are in the IFC. But we do spotlight, at least in our codes and standard activity, on these two chapters. We have started our code activity. This is the first time that this industry trade association was at the code action hearings. Participants in NAMBA were certainly active at the code action hearings and code development in the past, but this was the first time we got together collectively. And you can imagine, just like any other trade association or any other active participant, we reviewed the code action hearing agenda. We submitted our own code changes, and we participated at the virtual hearings that occurred over that month. So we did get some items approved by the committee, by the Fire Safety Committee. Just a couple of items here, just a couple of highlights. We saw in the 2018 code that this section on vertical and lateral flame spread was really focused on water resistant barriers. We worked with a code change with the Fire Code Action Committee of the ICC to kind of come up with a compromise proposal, and we did that together, and that got approved. Some other changes that we did, some of them are kind of clarifications, but I did want to let the Fire Service Membership Council know that there is a new section on insulated metal panels. This is a system that has been matured from metal composite materials that are already in the building code. Those sections have requirements on fire test requirements as well as other requirements, structural and the like. And the committee, Fire Safety Committee, approved a new section that models after those other existing sections on combustible wall claddings. We also had some other changes to the code. Some of them mainly are clarifications, and all those were approved. And our hope is that they will get approved at or they'll continue to be approved at the public comment hearing and as well as the vote by the membership. One of the changes that we worked on that we wanted to bring to your attention is something that we call engineering judgments or engineering analysis. This slide on the left-hand side just shows kind of a decision tree that we show as an industry talking to our prospective constituents, talking to our members. But really, I wanted to focus on the right-hand side. And I will tell you from the outset that this is already in the building code today. So our members will either do an NFPA 285 fire test, and I'll go into more detail about 285 in a minute, and they'll do that fire test on the assembly under consideration. They'll also rely on listings from laboratories like the ICC, the NTA, like UL, like Intertech, and others, and they'll submit a listing for the assembly that's going to be built in the field. And then finally, today, under Section 104.11 of the IBC, Alternate Materials and Methods, there are other cross sections that might have deviated from a tested assembly, and those get approved, and there's a report submitted, and the authority having jurisdiction will actually approve that report. What we wanted to do was make sure that that report, that engineering judgment or engineering analysis, has a direct reference to an NFPA 285 tested assembly. So we put a code change into Chapter 14 where we thought it's the appropriate place, and we wanted to give the authority having jurisdiction these three options, and we wanted to explicitly say that that engineering judgment is based on NFPA 285 testing. And if there's a component that is a substitute for the actual tested assembly, then there is an engineering judgment from a professional, fire safety professional, that relies on the NFPA 285 data, takes a look at the component and what its performance is, and then makes a judgment or an analysis that it would meet the NFPA 285 requirements. That didn't get approved. We're putting a public comment in. We think it's an important fire safety requirement. So I want to make a change and talk about high-rise facade fires. We developed an infographic based on some source data of high-rise fires over the last 30 years. And we kind of just wanted to present that as an infographic to our members. It's publicly available on our website to those interested in fire safety. And we just wanted to show, the importance of large-scale fire testing. And you can see, I'm just going to show my cursor here. This was the MGM fire in Las Vegas. You see there's a lot of fires that have occurred beyond that, and we can identify, or at least we can talk about that those fires didn't have a large scale test. Hence that the fire escaped the floor that it was on, outside of the window, fired up the skin of the building, and caused a lot of occupant deaths, a lot of property damage. So we wanted to present this just to kind of give a sense of where these global fires are, and really make a statement that the U.S., the International Building Code, with its requirements of NFPA 285, and with our the support of doing those tests, our members devote resources to conduct those large-scale tests. We lead the world in fire safety when it comes to these facades. There are some other, there were some other observations, and of course, these fires had a whole series of systematic failures. It's not just one element in terms of how these buildings perform, but we really support large-scale fire testing, and the building code also has it as a requirement. And of course, when it's adopted in a particular state, it is the law. And it's a good thing that that fire test is in the building code. This graphic is kind of just to make a transition. I do want to talk about NFPA 285, just kind of to get a baseline knowledge of what that testing does. And these are the triggers that are in the building code. And so you can see the entire cross section of the materials that our members produce are required to do this assembly testing. There are some height triggers in the building code. There are some allowances for buildings that are not that are less than 40 feet high, but anything above that needs to be NFPA 285 testing. And so you can see this cross section is fully tested in terms of how it complies with the International Building Code. NFPA 285 is a large-scale assembly test. Here's a graphic showing, the fire escaping the window and traveling up the outside surface of the wall assembly. It takes a look at flame propagation of exterior walls. It's a 16-foot, two-story test. And I'm going to show you a video in a minute so you can get a sense of it. Perhaps a lot of you have seen the test in terms of either on a video or in real time in a testing laboratory. But one of the things that is really the critical performance is vertical and lateral flame propagation, and there is a requirement that flame does not travel vertically 10 feet from the window or 5 feet side to side. And there are two burners in this test. One simulates the fire inside the room, and then after a certain amount of time, this exterior burner, which is shown here in the graphic, is ignited to simulate that the fire has escaped the flash over fire and is starting to escape the window of the building and getting ready to cause a lot of damage. Just the cartoon format of the test criteria, and excuse me, the test parameters and the pass criteria. Again, it's a two-story test. You can see that the wall assembly is represented by this brown color or gold color on the left-hand face. So there's no flame in the second floor room. There are thermocouples, so this wall is highly instrumented, and we look for nothing over 1,000 degrees above ambient after 30 minutes. And then no flame spread 10 feet above the window or 5 feet side to side. So I'll take a time out here and show you a couple of videos. Again, I got these from YouTube. These are publicly available. You know, I do want to thank Thomas Bell Wright because they posted these videos on YouTube. This one is a wall that passed, and I will tell you that this is an illustrative video alone. I don't know any information about this wall assembly. I really just want to show you what a test would look like if it passed. And if it does pass, that's the assembly that is out in the field in the built environment, and that's the assembly that in a fire incident that you would be responding to. So let me start the video. And you see it is compressed. You see there's a lot of technicians scurrying around here. And so this fire is lit, and then here on the left-hand side there is a clock. They started it at noon, and you can see a little bit of the time going on. But that fire is in that room. It's starting to burn. And you'll see this technician here after 5 minutes ignite the window burner on the outside, and now we have a fire that has escaped that room and now is causing damage on the exterior face. And you can see now that that's about 10 minutes after the start of the test, and they're monitoring that. And again, this wall supplier, whoever commissioned the test or paying for the test, is working with the testing laboratory, so they understand how to make the assembly. There's a whole lot of work that goes into building this assembly and designing it correctly and making sure that if it passes the test, it does it, following the NFPA 285 standard. It's about 20 minutes now, so I'll just go a few minutes just to kind of show you what a tested assembly that passed looks like. But you can see this is a fairly dramatic fire, but you don't see any flame spread or any propagation of the flame either vertically or horizontally. And I don't believe you see any flame in the interior cross-section. So this test is a passing test to this wall assembly. But we're coming on to about a half hour now. And a lot of scurrying around. Oops, let me stop that. Oops. So this is a passing wall assembly. This passed the NFPA 285 test. Again, there's thermocouple data that they would have to look at, but from a visual and a fire performance, how it responds to the fire that is being loaded on it, this would be a passing assembly. I do want to show you quickly another test. This one is shorter. Again, they'll show you in a minute that the exterior burner is lit, and you can jump to 20 minutes, but you can see already that there's flame inside the cross section. This is propagating a lot of flame. The manufacturer or the person who commissioned this test would have to go back and figure out what changes they would need to make to have that as a passing test. So our work in the building code, our work in understanding NFPA 285. We certainly are working at NFPA 285 of Standards Committee, as well as we work at ASTM as well in the E5 committees as well. So, again, NAMR takes on that typical role that you might expect a trade association to do in building code activity and fire safety activity. When we met with changing gears, when we met with Chair Metz, Vice Chair Reed, and others, as we were planning this presentation with Carl, there was a discussion about smoke toxicity, which was raised by, I'm presuming it's called the Executive Committee. Carl, I'm not 100% sure there, but by the leadership of your activity. And we appreciate that you're raising it. I mean, this is exactly why we're here, to talk to you about our activity, to tell you about our perspective, and of course to hear and listen to any feedback that you might have on some of the things that we do or some of the issues that you deal with in your respective fire departments. So we want to give you a few key observations, but we certainly want to listen to your feedback and hear any comments and possible potential collaborations. We do have a public website, the modernbuildingalliance.us, and we do have these topics available on our website for download, for your use without any requirements. We're not asking for any contact information or anything like that. So these are available, and certainly they're available to you to download today, or if Carl wants me to put something together for the Kodak, for the membership council, I'm certainly available to do that as well. We know that smoke is toxic, and the way we talk about it within our industry is that smoke is a combination of many different sources of materials that are burning. And when you respond to a fire incident, you need to be careful. And we have the background, and we understand that there are studies that are going on. There is fire safety activities that are going on. There are reports, and we know about those. And but way we talk about it within our industry is that it's bad, and regardless of the source or what's being burned, we want to make sure that you're protected as first responders and fire safety people. We talk about that carbon monoxide is typically the most critical, but really what we talk about as an industry is that our work is done so we make sure that the fire does not occur. And because of that, we support 5 common principles of fire safety. This is not unique to any other trade association, but we do want to make sure that the fire doesn't occur. But I also will show you some resources that are available at the American Chemistry Council to help fire services, first responders, and other professionals that are responding to fires. These are common principles. We work in the building codes to have fire prevention. We do all that work. We do all that testing to ensure that they have fire safety assemblies. We also support, and if there are opportunities to work with other groups like you to talk about detection and communication, we certainly support that. Make sure the occupants are protected. Any compartmentation or containment, we certainly to limit the fire spread. And then any active systems such as sprinkler systems we'll certainly support. And if there's opportunities to partner with groups that support that as well, we would certainly take that on and look at see if the collaboration is a reasonable perspective for a project for NAMBA. This is work that we're trying to help protect firefighters, first responders. This is work at the American Chemistry Council, and as I mentioned before, NAMBA is housed in ACC. Again, NAMBA has its own strategic plan, resources, but certainly we have the depth of the American Chemistry Council to kind of bring some of these programs to your perspective and to your attention. The American Chemistry Council has TransCare, free hazmat training, also funding and awards program for fire departments. And hopefully this is kind of related to the International Fire Code, where more of those provisions are contained in terms of hazardous material storage, response, firefighter safety, sprinkler systems, or other suppression systems. Also, the American Chemistry Council has Chemtrex, their emergency call center, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They also provide training. They also provide safety data sheets. And if the FSMC is interested in hearing about these programs, we certainly have someone from the American Chemistry Council that we can get in touch with to provide that information. So, as I mentioned before, we do talk about how we're going to do this outreach. Again, this is a great activity. Paul Coleman and I have attended many of your meetings in the past and gained a lot of valuable insight that we are bringing back to NAMBA to talk about that. We do want to figure out how we can do in other collaborative areas, and these are just the brainstorming that we talk about within NAMBA. How do we identify those issues that are important to the fire services? What kind of discussion activities, what kind of venues can we have to bring forward those issues? Where can we look to publications, education, or even sponsorships of fire departments or some other activity? So we have talked about all these, and one of the things that we're doing here, we want to hear what you have to say about some of these items, or of course some of the other issues that I presented in this presentation. And then finally, just to end, a screenshot of our website, modernbuildingalliance.us. This is where all that information that I had presented, where we house it there for the public and for you to use. David Mann again is here. David is the American Chemistry Council, but is the staff director of NAMBA. If there is some interest in Chemtrex and TransCare for this group, we can certainly get a hold of Erica to help out, and that's my contact information. If you'd like to contact me about any activity or any of this information that I provided today. So thank you for the time. Very much appreciate it. Chair Metz and Carl, I will turn the floor over back to you and see if there's any questions or comments or feedback.
Thank you very much, Jeff. For most of us here, when I was speaking with Jeff, the two previous times we've talked, this may be something that's very new for a lot of fire officials. And I explained how a lot of fire officials don't necessarily get involved in the wall construction inspection process. In many cases, that actually is the assembly itself is inspected by a building inspector. So depending on where you're at in the country, you may have varying different levels of experience as a fire service individual with wall assembly construction. I think, Jeff did hit on the one area that I had been thinking whenever we're dealing with use of plastics, use of foam insulation. The first thing that the fire service is going to jump to is both smoke toxicity levels and the prevalence of any cancer-causing potential flame retardants that are now impregnated in plastic or foam. That's a major issue for fire service right now. Jeff did say that they're going through all of the same regulatory tests. I don't know if there's anything you want to speak to that. That's one of the things that we're from a firefighter and cancer related issue, constantly evaluating, how our turnout equipment absorbs, off-gassing cancer-causing chemicals from fire situations. In many cases, that flame retardant that's there to make the building safer for the people that are living there makes it less safe for firefighters in the event of an actual fire. So always a concern of ours. I don't know if there's anything, Jeff, that you want to add to that from our discussion. Randy, I appreciate that. And again, we have hard discussions within NAMBA, and we have, frank discussions with the ACC. And again, we see that our role is that fire safety building envelope to ensure that we're safe in terms of having a fire incident. There's a whole host of research that we reference on our website, or at least I know there's one report from NIASH about smoke and
and there are many, many components, not just one, that are kind of in that environment. We hear you, I think is what I really want to say. We do want to help and figure out the proper way to protect your constituency. And we hope we can do that with you in some of this dialogue. It's really in a brainstorming session now, but we do have, we do share your understanding about the issue, and we do talk a lot about it within our community.
Perfect. And the alliance itself is relatively new, if I remember right.
That's right.
What, about 2 years that you guys have been a formal alliance?
I think David would say probably he was been working on it for 2 years, but we officially put the flag out in February of 2020. So about a year and a half. But
so a little bit over a year and a half.
Worked on it for more than that.
And I can tell you that we've been actively having conversation with Jeff and his team over probably the past 6 months. So they're looking to definitely get involved and get our questions answered. So does anybody on our call have any specific questions for Jeff, Paul, or David that they'd like to ask? Because they are looking for feedback from the fire service. They're looking to grow the alliance and build relationships here. So any questions you have from members, that would be wonderful.
Randy, this is Kelly. I do have a question on NFPA 285, if I can ask it.
Absolutely, Kelly. I figured you would.
Okay. Well, Jeff, just to let you know, I do work for UL. So 285, as you know, over the last cycle or two has had a lot of new input, in particular 2 items. One is the use of projections, and the other one is some type of cross-wind application of the flame for test purposes. And my question to you is that something that you guys support, so we have a more accurate 285 situation, or is that something that you guys are still forming an opinion on?
So Kelly, yeah, I mean, we have some experts within our group that are active at 285 committee, and we monitor those ballots. I think what we're working on right now is the engineering judgment annex that they're developing. I have not personally been involved in those ballots, but I will bring those back to our fire performance technical committee and get them thinking about those 2 items.
Okay. And if you're looking for a sponsorship opportunity, may I recommend the National Association of State Fire Marshals? You may want to talk to John or Jim Narva to that effect. They might be an opportunity for you to spread your message, because it's somewhat in line with their organization.
National Association of State Fire Marshals. Okay.
Correct.
And Kelly, maybe I'll get back to you with that contact information, if that's okay.
That would be fine.
Yeah, Kelly is a representative of NASFM on our governing committee here. So we're made up, the membership here is made up of members from ICC, NASFM, and then the International Association of Fire Chiefs. So you've got a pretty good cross mix of fire officials from across the country. All geographic regions are represented. So Kelly has the unique opportunity to both represent NASFM and to be an employee of ICC. So he's a little more involved in a lot of the testing processes that we get to read about, but don't necessarily get to witness on a regular basis.
That would be an employee of UL, not ICC.
That's correct.
Sorry, Randy.
Although we take them any day, you know.
My apologies to UL, Kelly. You did mention in as far as the testing labs, NTA, are you guys doing a lot of active work with NTA, as that now is a subsidiary of ICC? We believe that this is obviously the modular construction process is going to be taking off very quickly. And I'm just curious, as far as the different labs that you go to, does everybody apply the NFPA 285 test in a similar manner, or are there major differences going from one testing lab to another?
Again, a difficult question for me, but I can get with Eric Banks and get that back to you. I'm going to first say that that they have to follow the NFPA 285 standard to kind of get a test listing or a listing from NTA or UL or Intertech. I hope they don't have their local favorite way to do the test, because I think that would defeat, you know, the actual having a standard. But Randy and the group, I'll have to get back to you if Eric knows of any nuances. But I'm going to say no.
Perfect.
And you know, NAMBA doesn't do any testing itself, but our members, of course, are fully engaged in any of those laboratories. And some members may have a go-to lab, but certainly they know that NTA is now on the scene, and you know, then it depends on how they interact with our members.
Perfect. Yeah, until you brought it up, I had never personally read NFPA 285 and looked at what the standard was and what the recommended testing process was. So, you know, even for me that is very active in the code development side, this was a very new topic from a regulatory perspective for me. So,
good.
Any other questions for Jeff or his team from the people on the call?
Randy, this is Crystal.
Crystal, go ahead.
So you use the term large scale testing, and in NFPA 285, I understand that's for the exterior wall coverings, but it's also used in 855 for the energy storage systems, and then it's also used for high pile storage. Is there, and I might, you know, this might be a dumb question or whatever, but each industry seems to define large-scale testing differently for those applications.
Yes, that's the application.
Yeah, so we tried in California to introduce or propose a definition for large-scale testing, basically specifically for the ESS, but then it was brought to our attention that the term is used in other standards. So if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, Crystal, maybe you know, maybe I'm using that term incorrectly, because the building code refers to the NFPA 285 and its title of the standard. And so I guess when we talk about it here at our industry, it's a 16-foot, you know, panel, and it represents 2 stories. And so I guess maybe we use the descriptive large scale, but we definitely refer to the title that's referenced in the building code, and that's what the listing reports have, and that's what our members, you know, when they go to a testing laboratory. I don't know if there's any definition of large scale fire testing in the IBC right now, but it sounds like that's an issue that you may be dealing with, and maybe that gets brought forward to the International Building Code as a definition.
Yeah, thank you.
Not a very good answer, I know that, but
yeah, it just seems like the application, the term is used kind of broadly, and depending on the engineering of if it's going to be high pile storage, exterior wall covering, or ESS, large scale testing seems to mean different things.
Right.
Thank you, Crystal.
We may have to refer that differently within our industry to ensure we're accurate that it's a building code requirement in the actual title.
Thanks, Crystal. Jeff Shapiro, I saw your hand raised.
Thank you, Randy. So not so much as a question, but kind of just informing the group my history on this. I worked on a fire service proposal a couple of cycles ago to address the insufficiency of NFPA 285 in dealing with either wind effects or building geometry. And to Kelly's point, it's not just overhangs, it's also inside corners, because you tend to get circulatory wind effects that can form a fire tornado, which we have seen in wildfires. That same effect occurs on an inside corner of a building facade. And the intensity of the fire attacking the wall in that circumstance would seem to be far in excess of what the 285 test deals with. I am very familiar with 285. I've been to some of their meetings and in fact have complained to NFPA that there, at the time I was working with a committee, I think there were 2 fire service representatives, one of whom was not really active anymore, and one of whom which was new. There's very little fire service input or review of the 285 standard. And the other problem with that standard is that it's written by the fire test committee, which does all of NFPA fire tests. So it's a mix of people who may have some experience in this application or people who do small scale tests that may not be familiar or experienced with this particular application. But from my perspective, relying on NFPA 285 at this point was not a great path for making sure that the fire service concerns about the use of these assemblies on tall buildings were sufficiently addressed. And quite honestly, to my knowledge, there's nobody really watching this. So to the extent that the industry is interested in working with the fire service on this, they're working with the 285 committee. They're not working with the fire service, and the fire service really is not sufficiently represented on 285. To what extent the membership council wants to get involved in this topic now that the door has been opened by this presentation, I would certainly encourage it. To be honest, I was somewhat disappointed that when I put the code change in to deal with this a couple cycles ago, there was not a whole lot of organized support from fire service organizations to address it. So I didn't submit it this cycle, but it's still an issue that needs to be addressed. And while 285 is looking at some of it, again, it's not people with our interest from the fire service that are specifically looking at it on 285. So I appreciate the industry wanting to work with the fire service and making the presentation today. And I think it would be great if the industry carried that forward into having some type of a fire service and industry working group to address these concerns of building geometry as opposed to a flat panel wall test that's now probably 40 years old and doesn't really address how we use these panels in construction today, and the possible wind effect with building geometry, because the two combined can certainly create a more severe fire environment than what we are testing with this test that's currently available today. So that's my 2 cents. I think it would be great to have a partnership between the industry and the fire service, because traditionally I think we've been more at odds, but maybe this is an opportunity to start that.
Appreciate the comment.
Randy, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, David. That kill switch again. I don't hear any other comments or hands raised, so I want to thank the team for being here. I'm sure we'll be in discussion again, and like Jeff said, this is a great opportunity for us to at least open the lines of communication and start to build a relationship between the fire service and the industry there. There's a lot more to learn for us on this particular issue, and sounds like we'll be having some discussions with Jeff on how we can best go about doing that and making sure that the fire service is involved and our interests are served on the NFPA 285 committee there. So with that, unless you have any other questions,
just a quick comment for me.
Go ahead, Carl.
All I was going to do is just offer to Jeff and to David. I know Erica personally from a previous life and have worked with her in the emergency management business prior to her time there at your place. But if there's any connects that we can establish together, I'd be glad to work with her on any outreach and those kinds of things where we can bring the Code Council and ACC and Chemtrack together.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I'm sure
Sure
she'll
thing.
be thrilled to do something.
Yeah, please tell her I send my best.
I will.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Randy, really appreciate the opportunity. On behalf of NAMBA, thank you for your attention, and thank you to the fire service membership.
Chief
Perfect.
Shamim has her hand up as well.
Oh, thank you, Shamim.
Yes, I'm not sure if this is appropriate right now to bring up, but just following Jeff's presentation and also Jeff's recent comments have caught my attention. I'm actually just joined as a member of that NFPA fire test committee. I'm on the 285 test standard. I'd be happy to further get involved in this discussion with you, the fire service, and also Jeff, and be part of that discussion as well.
Thank you, Shamim. That's great to know. Very good. Well, we'll move on with the business side of our agenda then. And thank you very much for joining us today. And I hope you'll be able to join our calls on a monthly basis in the future.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Okay, Carl, we'll jump into the rest of our presentation. Normally, I would go in order. I just want to note that Bill Bryant, our liaison, is listening in on the call. He is currently on an airplane, getting ready to take off and heading to Boston for a ICC Board of Directors meeting this weekend. I don't believe he's going to be able to make any specific remarks to us, but there are a couple issues that I will bring up later on. But just wanted to recognize that Bill is watching and listening in, and we thank him for joining us as he travels. Let's see here. We got through 1, 2. Coming into item number 3. Thank you very much for joining us. I hope everybody has had an opportunity to register for upcoming code hearings and the ICC ABM in September for Pittsburgh. You should have gotten emails already. The governing committee members did get some information regarding their attendance. We are tracking, and I thank those that are able to join us in Pittsburgh, and understand those that are not going to. You will be able to have an opportunity to join us virtually if you'd like, but getting back into the travel business is going to be a slow process for some, and a lot of competing interests right now with conferences that are starting to come back in the fall. So we appreciate everybody trying to be involved as much as they can, and we hope to see most of you in Pittsburgh. With that, I'll ask for any additions or corrections to the agenda that we have before you here. Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to accept the agenda as submitted today?
This is Christine. I'll move.
Thank you, Christine.
This is Mike. I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. Do I have anybody opposed to this current agenda? Okay, hearing none, I will assume that motion will pass. So we'll move on to approval of minutes. The minutes were attached to the invitation here from our June meeting, Microsoft Teams. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes from June 17th, 2021?
So moved.
Kelly?
Second from Coy.
Thank you, Coy. Do I hear any opposition or discussion? In that case, I will ask for all in favor to approve the minutes from the June meeting. Please say aye.
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 Okay, that motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll jump into item number 4, work group updates. And I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our work group leads, the work that you're doing, extra meetings that you guys are having. The work groups are where the bulk of our work and progress is made. So thank you for your continued efforts there. I didn't see Andy jump on. For the record, Carl, I did see Kara jump on. So if we can add her to the attendee list for committee members, that would be great.
Got it. And Chief West was on earlier, so he may be able to speak on Andy's behalf. If he's
Absolutely. I'm going to Gary right now. Gary, do you have any updates for member recruitment?
Looking at his thing, Mr. Chair, says it's on hold, so he may not be able to join us.
Thank you very much, Coy.
Thanks, Coy.
We will come back and see if he gets off hold. So we will jump from member recruitment to emerging issues and trends. Mike DeRochers.
Good afternoon, Chair Metz. First of all, thank you for and Carl for organizing the presentation today. Good information to start a future conversation, so thank you. Our participation in the group meetings have been pretty low just because people are on vacation. But Kelly and I continue to work on our emerging issue and trends presentation, which will be presented at the NASM annual conference in September in Stowe, Vermont. And then again, that presentation will also be presented at the ABM in Pittsburgh. So that's what we're working on right now. I hope sometime in August at our group meeting that we can have the draft of that program done so we can share it with the working group and ultimately here with the committee for any input or edits that folks want to make. I'd also encourage folks, if they want to attend our annual conference in Stowe, it's not too late to register. You can go to NASM's webpage and all the information is there. So that's what we're working on now. We have 2 new subjects that we'll also be further discussing at our next group meeting, and that is, of course, the robotic storage systems and indoor fire pits. So those are the 2 newest items that have been presented to our work group.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. We look forward to hearing about your presentation that you and Kelly are going to do in Stowe there.
You're welcome.
Moving on to public awareness, Chief Reed.
Hi, everyone. So the Public Awareness Work Group met last week, and we discussed the beginning of our new goal is to update the Fire Service Membership Council webpage to make it more engaging, user-friendly, more informative, and more current. So we have discussed some preliminary ideas. We're going to be somewhat sketching out a kind of storyboard that will then turn into Carl so he can have a conversation with the website group in ICC, see what we can do, what we can't do. So our ideas so far are to have links or buttons to each work group as well as to the membership as a whole, but each work group will get their own link with their own page. So to the work groups and the work group leads, I just ask that you keep that in mind as we're progressing and think about what your needs might be on the website to get your particular type of information, whether it's documents, whether it is informational, educational information or notices, whatever kind of information you want to put on your work group link. We'll be coming to you with that request for information so that we can help design. So more to come. It's may take a little bit of time to try to get the design out, but we're excited to have this be something that is a bit more engaging and user-friendly to our membership. So that's where we're at right now. That's it.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions for public awareness? Thank you very much to your team also for their work. Training and education, Mark Wassam.
Thanks, Chief, and good afternoon, everybody. Like Michael said earlier, our attendance has been very light on our working group meetings due to summer vacations and such. So just short update from me today. We have a few events coming up where committee members will be contributing. I think Michael also mentioned his class he's doing for the Association of State Fire Marshals. That's coming up this fall. We have 3 courses at the National Fire Sprinkler Association annual conference, so we're gearing up for those. And I'll just mention, we learned a week or 2 ago that with the reduced educational offerings that are going to go with the ICC annual business meeting this year, they are not going to do a call for proposals. So it doesn't sound like we'll push anything forward for the ABM this year, but we'll keep working towards next year and make sure we get out in front of those folks. And we're also looking to get in front of some other organizations related to what we do. So otherwise, I just, like I always do, encourage anybody that's interested in what we're doing, whether it be on additional certification opportunities for fire service folks or educational opportunities. I'd encourage you to join our working group and meeting. You don't have to be a member of the committee to be on the working group. So please reach out. We meet the first Wednesday of each month at 11 a.m. Central. At least right now, we're evaluating different times that might work better, but that's still when we're meeting, and our next meeting is on Wednesday, August the 4th. So with that, I'll just stand here for any questions.
Thank you, Mark. I will say I was a little disappointed to hear that we weren't going to be doing a call this year, because we were very prepared for making a couple presentations and offering them up to the Education Committee. But I do understand the reason why for the AVM. But with that being said, you know, as Mark was mentioning, we're starting to get out beyond ICC with a lot of the presentations that are doing. So if you're a member of the Membership Council, especially if you're on the Governing Committee, and you're going to be doing presentations to other organizations, and you recognize that you're a member of the Governing Committee of the Fire Service Membership Council, and get us a little plug there, if you can let Mark know, we're trying to track a lot more of the education that is provided through members of the Membership Council through other organizations, and be able to show that our footprint is well beyond just presenting education here at ICC. There are a lot more opportunities from the fire service for various different conferences than some of the building departments may have, where ICC is their main area. A lot of statewide conferences where presentations are being made, and we know we're out there. We're just trying to do a better job of tracking where presentations are being made based on members or from members of the Membership Council itself. So I just offer that up to you, and hope that Mark will be flooded with people that are doing presentations in their home states. Moving on to item number 5, reports from officers. I'll start off with ICC past president. As we know, Bill Bryan's traveling. I looked through and I don't see any other ICC board of directors on the call, because they're pretty much all traveling right now. And we look forward to getting some information from them based on this call, and from from this meeting. This is their first in-person meeting since the pandemic started, so a little bit of normalcy for them. And I do believe that after this meeting occurs, that they likely will have some bylaw change released from the board for consideration in Pittsburgh, so you want to keep your eyes open for those. Jumping to, I'll let Christine go first. Christine, anything you would like to present on behalf of your vice chair role?
Sure, it's more of just an update. I just wanted to remind everyone that the Fire Service Membership Council is working in collaboration with the Building Membership Council for work on the Innovation and Code Administration Award. There's some updates and so forth that the two councils have been working on. From the FSMC, Tim Deal and Brian Adams are our representatives. So not to put Tim on the spot, but I see he's on the meeting. Tim, I don't know if you have a report of any activities or progress that the group that you're participating on has had, or we're just going to still stand by and then move forward. I know that there was some timelines with the current process, but maybe you can give an update of where things are at with that.
Thanks, Christine. And I wish I had some kind of update, but there has been no more movement from the building council. And I'm just waiting to hear back for those topics that we discussed earlier. I expect to have a lot more conversations here in the next week, since everything's closed and we have to really start review those proposals and get everything ready.
Great. No, I appreciate that. And that's one thing too, you know, we're really glad to be able to have a working relationship the way we do with the Building Membership Council. And this is just another example as to what we do in collaboration with them and all of the other membership councils. So we're happy to be a part. Randy, that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Christine. I do see that Ed Lozinski is also on the call. Maybe Ed may have an update on where we're at with applications and whatnot, since they're taking the lead this year. Anything to add, Ed?
I do not have anything to add, sorry. But no, I appreciate the shout out from Christine and Tim, and yeah, we love working with you guys. And yeah, our next meeting is not until August 25th, so I probably won't have any updates. Well, I guess if I hear anything, I'll forward those over to you, Randy, and you can pass that along to your group as well. But we might not have any updates for a little while ourselves. So.
Perfect. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but thanks for the information, Ed. Thank you.
No problem. No problem.
As far as a report from me, I did want to let everybody know that I have been a continuing member or participating member of the long-term code development process. I am not on the committee itself, but they're letting all interested parties listen in. Yesterday, we did have a call where a new code adoption schedule was proposed. It was voted on and did pass through that committee and will be referred to the board. This is something that we've been watching and listening to a lot of different ideas, but just for those people that are involved in the code development process, there's been a lot of discussion on potentially second opportunities for the committee to hear change proposals or public comments. That was proposed yesterday, where it would add a second round of committee hearings only for public comments. And then it actually shifts the Group A and Group B final action hearings. Normally, we would be doing those in the fall, immediately following the spring hearings for each Group A and Group B cycle. They are proposing in year 3, which was normally the dead period with no code hearings, to actually host final action hearings in year 3 for both Group A and Group B code cycles. So this is something very different from the way we've operated before. It'll be interesting to see what the board's feeling is on this. You know, Mike Pfeiffer was on the call. The ICC staff had not evaluated what this means. And normally the year 3 was utilized by ICC staff to deal with publishing issues. This is actually kind of undoing some of that, but, you know, Pfeiffer was going to be evaluating and determine, you know, what type of impact this would have, but that has been formally presented, and we will see where that goes. But that would definitely change how the fire code and building code are both heard, voted upon, you know, and would change the dynamics of the committee option right there, where we'd only be looking at public comment hearing or public comments on those items when we get into the final action process. So there'd be kind of 2 rounds of public comment from that point there. Something unique for you to follow. If you have any questions, see me. But I do know that Beth Tubbs is on the phone or on the call, and I wanted to give Beth an opportunity to see if she has an update she'd like to give regarding our current public comment process.
Yes, thank you. Admittedly, I've just been focusing in on the fire code more, but just as a ballpark, I think fire code has on the order of 100. Probably that might reduce down a little bit. Public comments, not code changes. Code changes, there's fewer because you can have multiple public comments per code change, and there's about 15 or so public comments on the wildland urban interface. Again, I think it's more like on the ballpark 11, 12 code changes, code change proposals. Couple dates, I believe, and I looked at the other day. I think August 2nd is when we'll post a schedule. So I have no good answers. If you contact me, I don't know what the schedule will be. August 13th is when we'll post the public comment agenda. And you'll probably see some emails coming soon about an FCAC meeting. I'll give it a week or two, probably after that. So maybe a week, so people can take a look what's in there first before we get on a call for that group. And then the hearings are September 21st to the 28th. At first they shifted a little bit in case anybody noticed some inconsistency. They fixed it. It did say 22nd to 29th, but it's the 21st to the 28th. And it's updated in CDP and on the website and all those types of things. So that's kind of just some real basics. The numbers weren't too crazy. I think actually general and fire safety got more than they maybe typically would have gotten. Was it means of egress? I don't know. But those committees did. But fire code, I mean, it's about a third of what we heard. And then the other thing is the fire code part of the hearing. There's no committee, but there'll probably be about 10 other, guessing about 9 or 10 other non-IFC changes that we hear from the building code. We being that part of the hearing focused on fire.
Perfect. Thank you, Beth. Yeah, that schedule change did throw me for a loop because I'm not used to starting the hearing process on a Tuesday. So normally we would start, say, on a Wednesday after they've done the banquet and done all the festivities from the ABM. This actually pushes it up a little bit since there are limited educational opportunities, and we're getting started with code hearings right off the bat on Tuesday in Pittsburgh. So keep an eye on that. If you are not going to the ABM, but you plan to be there for code hearings, it's a day earlier than usual. Thank you, Beth. Carl, what do you have for us that you've been working on?
I'm here. I'm going to put something into the chat that kind of materialized yesterday. We've been working on for a while. So what you'll see in the chat is an article that was published by NBC News yesterday. One of their reporters named Susie Kim out of their Washington, D.C. office has been doing some watchdogging on the housing and urban development folks, reference some of their new rules. They've got a new rules package, safety package called Inspire. And some of you are probably familiar with it. If you're not, I recommend taking a read of the article. So we've been working closely with NFPA and the CFSI, Congressional Fire Service Institute Coalition that we're a part of to address fire and life safety issues with, I don't know, somebody's got the mic going there too. I don't know if it's you, Randy, or somebody else, but if you guys could check your mute. So we've been working on this piece and providing comment into HUD on Inspire, and things at HUD typically work in a very slow and methodical fashion, certainly not at light speed. So we've given comments on this, but one of the things you'll see in the article is that a number of fire and life safety requirements in their kind of draft rules have been backed off of. So for instance, the primary example that's cited in the article is now accepting less than one fire extinguisher per floor in public housing unit. And there are several others to do with maybe places where we don't touch as much, the National Electrical Code, GFCI requirements, but also other life safety issues to do with, up-to-date roofing, windows, those kinds of building envelope kinds of things. So we're working on that, and we have actually a fair amount of momentum behind this project within CFSI now. The union, the IAFF, has taken a position that this is a firefighter health and safety issue, and with that, the IAFC has come along and some others. So as well as NFSA, and Gary's on the phone, and Vicky has been speaking up on that. So that's been something that's been happening here over the last several months, frankly years with HUD, but last several months on this particular program, and wanted to bring this up to the group so that you knew we were working on it. And if you do have any comments, please send those along to me and or Tim, and we'll be glad to push those up through our government relations team and make sure that they're addressed. But that's one issue that we're working on. I also had a very successful call this morning with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I spoke with the Resilience Directorate, and under that Resilience Directorate is FIMA, the Federal Insurance Mitigation Agency, and then under FIMA is where all of the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program activities, or HMA, the Hazard Mitigation Assistance Division is. So I spoke with them directly this morning in a listening session relative to wildfire, and we've been working pretty hard here of late to, along with our friends at the Fire Administration, to try and bring wildfire nomenclature and recognition into the greater or the broader lexicon of FEMA, where it has not been previously. The example I'll share with you is that FEMA published a loss avoidance study that was based on the codes. So basically, using the codes has resulted in X amount of loss avoidance across the country against so many different hazards. Noticeably missing in this great report that was published was any mention of wildfire, because of the fact that FEMA simply doesn't have mechanisms in place to track it, and it has not been on their radar. So we are actively working with Chief Hoover and Nicole LaRosa, Brian Metzger, and others at the Fire Administration to try and position them front and center in this realm, and also not only speak from the ICC standpoint to do with risk reduction, home hardening, and fire-resistant construction, defensible space, and others, but also make sure that we bring along the U.S. Fire Service standpoint on all of this too, because FEMA has been looking in a significant way to the to higher education institutions and think tanks and so forth for policy development. And this was a really great opportunity to get the U.S. Fire Service perspective pushed in on this too. Kathy, I see your note there too. And, I'd be glad to have a sidebar with you about that and how we're working. We've got some really great ideas and things moving. So that's what I've been working on. Got a lot of different things going on, but those are just a couple of the quick highlights. I just send along a quick reminder to let everybody know that Tim and I and our GR staff are working pretty hard to make sure that this annual conference is going to be a great experience for you. We've got a majority of the folks on the governing committee coming to attend. We've got a great dinner set up if you can make it on Saturday evening prior to our meetings on Sunday. And as Randy mentioned, the annual business meeting is Monday. If you can hold over for that and make your voice heard as a voting member on the floor there, that would be absolutely fantastic. So I guess I'll leave it at that in consideration of time here today, but lots going on here at the ICC, and glad to speak with anybody offline or take your questions at this point. So that's all I have today, Chief.
Thank you, Carl. Unless anybody has any questions for Carl, we'll move on to ongoing business. And I am actually going to give the floor to Jeff Shapiro again, because I believe he wants to talk on long-term code development. Did we lose Jeff?
Actually,
there we go.
Well, you already brought up what I was going to talk about, so I guess there's not really any need to go into more detail today, but I don't know whether there'd be an interest in the group. Since you're on top of it, you could perhaps present something that shows the proposed code development process with the second hearing incorporated, so that people have a sense of what the board's going to be looking at that may come in the next code development cycle. But I think it would be of interest to anybody who's participating in code development, and it may be of interest for folks to know, if you trace this back about 6 years, it actually is something that did have some roots in the Fire Service Membership Council activity in partnership with the IAC. So things take a long time to grow sometimes, but in this case, I see a sprout, and looks very promising.
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Jeff, and we will put up the schedule itself. What were your initial thoughts and reaction when you heard about this particular proposal?
Well, I'm probably not the right one to ask, because I'm the author of the original proposal.
Well,
I think it's
you've
great.
been around a lot longer than a lot of people. I know there's been a lot of discussion. Let's see here if I can figure out where I'm going here.
Yeah, my thought was that, maybe on the next call, if I'm able to make it, or you, we could kind of go through step by step there. I was not able to make the call with the full committee yesterday, but there were an awful lot of questions that came up from people during the work group where this got its initial legs before it went back to the full committee. And, if you want to dedicate maybe 10 minutes or so, 15 minutes to going through it and question and answer on a future call, I'd certainly be happy to do it if I can make it, or obviously you can do it. You've been involved the whole time.
Sure. I'm trying to bring that up. Can anybody see my screen right now?
Yeah, we got your screen. It's actually probably a little small for folks, though, if you want to maybe enlarge the,
we'll try and
the
enlarge
table or
it
the
some
spreadsheet
here.
a little bit.
So you can see right here, year one, this is where we, just finished right now. Year one, group A codes, here's fire code right here. This is the normal process. We would go through March for proposals. Our first committee action hearings would be normally right here, which they were. When you look and scroll down, you can see in this area here in yellow, actually would call for a second public comment hearing for a committee action hearing in July. So you do your main proposals, you'd go through a public comment process, and then the committee would hear those public comments again right here. Then you come into normally September, October. This is where we would originally be doing final action hearings. And the way it's being presented right now to the board is that agenda, like it says, would be limited only to items receiving a public comment disagreeing with the first hearing comment recommendation. Okay, so they're trying to limit the amount of time spent on public comments after the committee's ruled once and ruled twice. And then when you come over here into year three, which is normally a dead period. Now, remember, no public comment or no final action hearing here. We have not completed anything. You come in here to year three, which has normally been an open year. This was for publication. Now you're seeing up at the top, Group A and Group B code here, membership hearing and final action via online voting. And you'll come on down here. Everything in yellow would be new. So March, you've got Group A, Group B public comments. In April, you've got a hearing process. And then you keep coming down to where you get into September, October, you're back to your normal ABM process, but there are no hearings here. The hearings occurred up here in April for public comment, final action type stuff. So this is very different. It still gives them, basically a 6-month window once we've done final action hearings and the online governmental committee voting or governmental voting to be done. Normally they would have had all this time to work on publishing right here. But this has been what has been requested for many years, was a second process so that we didn't have to deal with all the public comments and final action hearings at one time. It gives people a second opportunity to refine and receive feedback on the comments. And a lot of them, as a committee member, I can tell you that there's a lot of things that as a committee member, I probably would have voted for if they tweaked it just, minorly. And I think that's what we're trying to get to, is a proposal that has been approved by committee rather than those that have just flat out been denied because the committee says, absolutely not. And then we put it into the hands of the membership. And in many cases, it's either the membership says, absolutely, we agree with the committee, or it becomes a very difficult time for them to reach the 2/3 required in order to override a committee recommendation. So this process right here would create that second window on the public comment process for the committee to be able to move things forward, and then ensures that when we get down into here, we're only dealing with those items that receive public comments disagreeing with that first hearing committee recommendation. So this is very different, very new. It'll be interesting to see what the board feels when they get this in their hands. I'm sure ICC staff will weigh in at that point to find out if this is feasible. But this actually came out of the Industry Advisory Committee that made this recommendation. There were about 4 different recommendations that were presented. This is the one with some minor tweaks. Everything that you see here in blue was actually added. But the proposal itself, for the most part, came from the Industry Advisory Committee. And I do believe that Jeff is a member of that committee, correct, Jeff?
Yeah, but it also came from the Fire Service Membership Council. It was kind of processed through both at the same time. Okay.
So that must have been before my time on membership council. So we're going back, quite a few years. So, Jeff can show that this has been a long time coming. There's been a lot of requests to alter and amend this process, and we're finally starting to see that here. So I hope those of you that are involved in co-development will get an opportunity to see this, get in your hands, and then we'll wait to see what the board of directors feel. Very good.
Are they going to actually vote on this, or is this something they're just hearing now?
The vote was taken by Long-Term Co-Development Committee yesterday. So my understanding is this will be presented to the board in the board meeting they're doing this weekend. I don't know if it will be for them to take action on, or if obviously Mike Pfeiffer is going to have to do a lot more of research on the impacts of this, but it may just be for information only at this point. But I anticipate sometime later on this year at a board meeting, they will take action on this in preparation for the next code development cycle.
Thank you.
Perfect. And I'm trying to stop sharing my screen right here. Okay, we should be back to normal now. Thank you, Jeff, for that information and history there. And just wanted to wish you and Emily well as you work through your issues, and I hope that her health is improving there.
Thank you, Randy. I appreciate it.
Moving on to, let me close that one out. We're back here to agenda. New business. Anything from the governing committee that they'd like to list as new business?
This is Kelly. I've got a little update I'd like to provide, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, we all had the privilege of watching Steve Kerber talk about FSRI probably 2 months ago, and explain the work that they did. And I want to kind of announce what he could not say at that time. But in fact, FSRI is changing its focus, where before it was primarily operational tactics and the science behind that. And now the UL nonprofit board has essentially agreed to fund their expansion into all types of fire science research. They're going to be increasing their staff. There's a slight branding change that'll be happening. There'll be a formal announcement on the 29th of July. But just as a peek forward, they'll be working more broadly with extending their collaborative model to engage fire investigators, fire safety engineers, safety educators, and the general public, in addition to just the fire service operations like they have in the past. And that expanded focus will evolve to address unresolved fire safety risks and emerging dangers in general. And so that their whole realm world is expanding. It will continue to be somewhat based in Columbia, Maryland. We actually are hoping that we're actually going to be able to build a world-class lab just for them, so they don't have to compete with the profit side for fire testing anytime they want to do work. So all this is kind of coming down the road with a lot more information in the future, but I just want to put that out there. I look at it as an exciting addition to fire science in general and research in general that will be available to all of us, rather than just having an operational bent to it. So that's my 2 cents today.
Perfect, Kelly. That's exciting news, and great to see ULFSRI actually making some headway there and moving beyond the tactics side, because we all know there's a lot more that they can be involved in, and the people there are great. So congratulations. Anything else new business wise from governing committee?
Chief, I've got one other thing.
Go ahead, Carl.
So just in addition to my announcements earlier today, I know that we've all been kind of tracking what's been happening down in Surfside with the building collapse in Florida and South Florida. So I neglected to mention, and I just wanted to make sure that the members knew. I mean, while this is more of kind of a building and structural kind of thing, you know, we all in the fire service are, of course, tracking this incident from a USAR perspective, and certainly out of interest of you know, all the reasons that we should be tracking it, right? So a couple pieces of information just to let you know what the Code Council's doing and what we do know from this. So the Florida Building Code was ranked #1 out of 18 Atlantic and Gulf Coast states by IBHS, and they're kind of ranking or rating the states piece that they do each year. So that's kind of comes out ahead of hurricane season and looks at building code standards and so forth. And they have a very strong code, but what the important part of the operative piece is here is that the Surfside condo unit was built in the 1980s. So under the SBCCI prior to Florida having a statewide code. But, you know, having said that, there's, you know, the ICC organization is very plugged into what's going on down there. We're working super closely with our partners at the Building Officials Association of Florida, or BOF, as they may be known more widely. In fact, you know, there are a series of task forces and investigations and all kinds of things. So I wanted to just assure the group that we are involved trying to make sure that ICC members, through our government relations efforts and enterprise-wide efforts all the way up to Dominic's office, are working diligently to make sure that we've got good representation on those task forces, on the investigation. You know, we've offered all of our support and resources that we can to NIST through our technical shop. Mike Pfeiffer's leading that. And there are a number of other things that will come out of this. One of the most significant things is that we anticipate, and Sarah Yerkes has been able to share some of her perspective on the post 9/11 recommendations that were made by NIST, and express maybe a similar feeling that there will be outcomes and recommendations made by NIST coming out of this investigation that will be as important and at the same level as what we saw happen after the 9/11 disaster up in New York City due to terrorism. So, you know, we are working that piece of it. To that end, we're also, I don't have a lot of details to share at this point because it's still in the planning stages, but mid-August, we're looking at convening a panel discussion sponsored by us in cooperation with the National Institute of Building Sciences and hosted by both. So that's going to be down in South Florida in the middle of August. We'll have, you know, invitations and information on how to participate in that coming out as soon as it's available. But it's all evolving, as you might think. There's lots of rumors, there's lots of conjecture, but we're tracking it and we're as engaged as we can be. And if anybody has any questions or wants to know anything more specifically, please contact me offline and I'll be glad to share what I have with you at the time and make sure that you're on the list to get more details as they become available. So that's what I have on that.
Thank you very much, Carl. I think that this issue is actually going to get much bigger as time goes on. It's not just a Florida issue. We're actually seeing a lot of buildings out here in Southern California, especially ones along the coast, that are starting to at least have greater levels of inspection done. We do an annual high-rise inspection on any building that's 75 feet or over out of the fire department. It's a state mandated inspection, obviously, but a lot of these mid-rise condo complexes in various different beach communities are starting to look at the same issues that they experience in Florida. And I think that, you know, if I was a betting man, I'd see some legislative change coming out of certain cities to require more intensive evaluation and inspection in these, because I know that we've only scratched the surface on what we have seen over the past month in Surfside. So
yeah, I can tell you firsthand from what I've seen, the legislative piece is spun up and has not reached a crescendo yet, but it's certainly at a high volume in South Florida, and I expect that to do exactly what you said and permeate to areas throughout the country and have similar kinds of things happen. So the legislators are engaged; they just don't quite know exactly how to engage most effectively yet, and we're trying to help educate them on how to do that the right way. So
yeah. More to come on this for sure. Thank you, Carl. Any other new business? Okay, well, our next meeting is going to be Thursday, August 19th, our normal date and time. I hope you'll all be able to join us, and we'll open it up to questions and comments from the audience. Any non-governing committee members that want to add anything for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none, I want to thank everybody for attending this month. A lot of great information, and we hope you'll be able to join us again, and we hope we'll be able to see a lot of you in Pittsburgh in September. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to
Motion to
adjourn. This is
adjourn.
Christine. Oh, did I hear Kelly too? Or Coy?
It was Mark. I'll make the motion or I'll second it.
Oh,
I'll take a motion from Christine and a second from Mark. All in favor of moving on.
I.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you in August.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.